Okay, this is going to be an overview of the very large, impressive Suwannee River Basin, especially for Florida. Of course, it's one of the least populated, if not the least populated. Relatively pretty pristine, even though there are impacts. Start to get into that in this video. But let's, again, uncover the importance of the Suwannee River. Suwannee River, 396-kilometer, or between 230 to, I've seen some estimates around 260. I guess they're including some parts of the Okefenokee swamp. Yeah, really long river, flows from Georgia to the Gulf of Mexico and Florida and the Nature Coast. The Suwannee River is a wild blackwater river, meaning it moves through wetlands and swamps, which cause its water to turn acidic and darkly stained. This feature, in addition to extreme variation in water flow, limits the fish population, especially in the Georgia portion of the Suwannee River Basin. Moreover, the change in water color can be seen at the confluence of the Suwannee and the Withlacoochee River. The Suwannee River also includes the Suwannee Straits, an ancient geologic feature of Florida that was present during the Paleogene period. That was about 50, 60 million years ago, when, again, Florida was pretty much underwater. Or yeah, it was entirely underwater until the Oligocene around 30, 40 million years ago. Anyways, the 32 kilometers of the Suwannee River estuary falls within the Lower Suwannee National Wildlife Refuge, a U.S. National Wildlife Refuge system on the western coast of Florida. The nutrient influx of the Suwannee River, along with tidal creeks and offshore islands, plays an important role in supporting a unique wildlife habitat for various species that take refuge in this system. And unlike most refuges, that it wasn't set up to protect a particular species, is to protect very wild, large riverine system, very productive river delta system even to this day, because it's so protected on the lowermost Suwannee. About half of the Suwannee River Basin's area is in Georgia. It drains an area about 28,542 square kilometers, including all the 20 Georgia counties. Which, you look at a map of Suwannee River, it doesn't look like it covers all of Georgia, but then you see a more detailed map. Where is it? Yeah, because see, there's the main course of the Suwannee. Snakes its way from northeast to southwest overall, and especially these two river basins, the Withlacoochee and the Alapaha, absolutely massive river basins. And over the years, more pollution has come from Valdosta, some untreated sewage waters, during, I guess, they had outdated systems, they flood easy. Apparently there's been work on that. Maybe this improved, or maybe just fortune right now. But yeah, still overall, not that many people around here for how large an area this is. So pretty wild blackwater river, lots of swamps, lots of springs, of course. Yeah, that's what these circles are. Those are all springs, I'm pretty sure. The Santa Fe River right there. See a sizable, respectable basin in its own right up there near Gainesville, where really a stone throws away from Gainesville. Lots of springs, and the Cody Scarp cuts through around right there, which is an ancient shoreline feature, and it's actually where the Santa Fe River goes underground for a few miles and then pops up past it, and you have more lowlands past the Cody Scarp. Pretty noteworthy geological feature in Florida where there's not too many, besides like the Lake Wales Ridge, Brooksville Ridge. There's some hills, apparently, Cody Scarp, but overall, lots of lowlands, especially around the coast. I know not everybody knows that, but yeah. So look here, and you can see this I found this on the WWALS Suwannee River Keeper on one of the links oh, there's a mine over there. Huh. You still have the nice swamp, and you can see where it forks, before the river really starts. Yeah, so lots of sheet flow, as most swampy rivers tend to originate. More lake-like. I don't know where the Suwannee Sill is. I know it blocks off during the winter, so even though swamps are supposed to drain, be more dry in the winter, but it's more lake-like. Oh yeah, it's around here somewhere. But most of the time it's open to allow the water to drain into the upper Suwannee River. You can see all the tributaries adding a lot of flow. Yeah, there's the phosphate mine. It's definitely impacted some springs and the aquifer in general. But overall, besides agriculture, some point source and non-point source pollution, but agriculture still has a tremendous impact, as I'll scratch the surface here, start to touch on here. But yeah, very nice broad river full of springs, unique species, unforgettable outdoor adventures. I mean, there's other big rivers in Florida too, don't get me wrong, but the Suwannee is definitely up there, especially for how pristine it is. Because see here, the largest river basin and the largest river in terms of volume of water is the Apalachicola River and the Panhandle. But of course, the more I read into the Apalachicola River, although I might visit it one day, you have lots of water war interest, lots of water wars going on between Alabama, Georgia, and Florida, and the oyster industry on the Gulf there collapsed like a decade ago. Yeah, 2012, because there wasn't enough water coming into the estuaries to support. And people blame Atlanta, but actually, when I was reading the John Dunn book about Florida's water crisis, actually most of the water being siphoned off from Georgia is actually from agriculture. Lots more, but I'm sure, yeah, Atlanta still used many, many millions of gallons. That's a very good book. I might do a book review once I finish it, look through my notes and stuff, or what I've underlined. But yeah, it is quite impressive. Like, the more you look at it, all the creeks and I mean, you have to figure it, with so much agriculture in the region, agriculture and especially in Suwannee County up here, driven through there to get to Royal Spring, Lafayette Blue Spring, lots of agriculture. They have those large what do you call them? Those really water intensive white, really tall, broad watering. I don't know if they're automatic. I'm not sure, they might be. Um, yeah, those really large crawlers do a lot of watering, and also dairy farming and poultry is also big in this region. But yeah. So yeah, agriculture accounts for almost 29% of the land use in the Suwannee River Basin. Seems hard to believe until you actually drive through there. You see there's like a bunch of trucks and kind of people up there, kind of an accent, and there's people going to the springs all the time, but there's people that live up there. It's not all just very, very small town, although there are, Chiefland is one of the bigger towns, Brantford, Live Oak. Live Oak has several thousand people. But overall, I have a source here that talks about it. That the basin is larger than several states, but has about the population of an overseas territory. Where'd it go? Oh yeah, I think it's in this one. Nope, it's not. Oh yeah, it's in this one. Yeah, so it's right up there with the largest Florida river basins, or basins in general. Yeah, almost as big as Massachusetts or Hawaii. Basin's bigger than Vermont, New Hampshire, or New Jersey, and New Jersey. I'm telling you, it's not just size, it's the quality of some of these places too. You see those springs. Of course, there's Gulf sturgeon. Way more Gulf sturgeon here than any other river in the Gulf of Mexico, for a variety of reasons. Yeah, there's no states with 300,000 or fewer people. Even Wyoming has almost twice as many as the Suwannee River Basin. The Suwannee River Basin is larger than 6 states. It has an overseas population of overseas territory. So it's a good thing it's so protected, but also it has been exploited through agriculture. And I hope they don't suburbanize it to hell and back like they have in many parts of they really started to develop over Citrus County, Pasco County, just north here of Tampa. And maybe that's coming to it someday. Also, I've heard there is a chance of here's some of them piping water from North Florida down to South Florida. So don't get me wrong, it is concerning that a lot of metropolitan, huge, sprawling areas surround the Suwannee River Basin. But hopefully, as more people discover Suwannee River and all of its glory and features that are worth protecting and fighting for, hopefully it can be set aside and more protected areas can be put in place, not just the state parks, not just some wildlife refuges here and there. You hear about like out west, like huge land areas are super protected. I'm like, why don't we have that here in Florida besides like the Everglades? Even then, agriculture definitely impacts the Everglades. But so a bunch of plants and animals. I don't know why Gulf sturgeon is not on there. Gopher tortoises are a lot of places. Oh yeah, I've heard about Florida mouse. Apparently, isn't all that common throughout Florida. Yeah, definitely have some rare species. And I've heard the fauna of North Florida is more like other northern states more than South Florida. It has to do with climate and, being connected right up there with Georgia, I suppose. Yeah, here's something alarming. So, this isn't true for every single spring in Florida. Some springs are mostly impacted from, around Orlando, Apopka, etc., from septic tanks, too many septic tanks, and too much human stormwater runoff. But because there's less people in the Suwannee River Basin, you have these issues. So around Jenny Springs, they found nitrogen loading, which leads to the ugly, slimy pond scum, aka filamentous algae, to grow, and that smothers the submerged, healthy, native submerged vegetation. It's been happening in a bunch of springs, including and especially Fanning Spring and Manatee Springs. Still nice to visit. Definitely something else. Still pumps a lot of water, but I really would like to see them clean up those springs and reduce all this nitrate pollution. Anyways, Jenny Springs, which is in the mid-Santa Fe River. Of course, the Santa Fe River is right before the very broad, very impressive lower Suwannee. You have agriculture 81% of the nitrate loading, septic tank 6%, Hornsby Spring, also on the Santa Fe River. Agriculture 77%, septic tanks 5%. Itchytuckney Spring, which Itchytuckney River is only 5 or 6 miles long, but it contributes many, many millions of gallons, and actually 4% of the Suwannee River. 4% of the Suwannee River's total water volume is from the Itchytuckney River. And even, I know it receives pollution from Lake City and other places in that sub-basin, but apparently even then, agriculture 56%, septic tanks 14%. So, yeah, not going to get too into that. Definitely ramifications. But yeah, this is really interesting. The 1970s report of saying how impressive and worthy of protection the Suwannee River is. I wish the designation of a wild scenic river would actually grant more protections, but it seems like big business and developers will find a way around it at the present. Here's something concerning. So, of course, it's no secret that agriculture and nitrate pollution has increased every year. And it's even affecting drinking water. So, of course, the federal safety standard for nitrate, nitrogen in drinking water is 10 parts per million. But in some areas, they're finding 20 to 30 parts per million range. Oh yeah, and I meant to say, of course, I'm sure in the Suwannee River, the springs right on the Suwannee River, probably even more than that. How much nitrogen is coming from agriculture, no doubt. But yeah. See, especially where most of the pollution is coming from, Lafayette and Suwannee counties, right there along the middle Santa Fe River, which is still fairly sparsely populated, but there's a lot of agriculture, poultry, and those kinds of industries in that region. Well, yeah, more like right there. All this land use still has high impacts because the soil is so sandy And even if, I've heard there's efforts to curtail that kind of pollution through composting or getting rid of waste other ways instead of just spreading it through their property, because this can sink through the sandy soil and into the aquifer, which leads to inevitably release the rivers and out into the Gulf. Yeah, they have some oyster reefs, and that already there's, through pollution and or too much lack of rainfall and too much water use, they've had to do some oyster restoration. On the oyster reefs in the Suwannee Sound. It's an estuary, it's not absolutely massive, but still can't deny that there's enough fresh water. It definitely makes it, Suwannee Sound is kind of like an estuary. And though it's obviously not as big as like Tampa Bay, Charlotte Harbor, etc. Still, fresh water definitely makes this region. Without enough fresh water, that's not healthy, as with the rest of the river. Pollutants, too much fresh water withdrawals definitely affects the whole river. Anyways. Yeah, it seems like, I'm not going to make it too political, but just throwing a few $1 million at the issue instead of tackling the source where the pollution's coming from. There's more effective strategies. And then there's the Sable Trail pipeline. Apparently it was put in a few years ago. Environmentalists were very afraid, tried to stop this, but there's no stopping big business trying to pipe natural gas to Orange County. Lots of business down there. It'll find a way. Of course, it's concerning because with that springs hydrology, with the aquifer being so shallow, yeah, you can't do that in Florida. You're not going to go around the aquifer or around the karst geology. It's all interconnected. Even I've heard withdrawals over there in the St. John's, even in Jacksonville, pumping too much over there impacts the water aquifer levels in the Suwannee River. Right? Because where's the map of the Florida aquifer? Don't know where it went, but yeah, there's a hydrologic divide around Cedar Key over here. Everything north of that to Daytona, it's all interconnected in roughly the same aquifer system. Underwater, groundwater, which of course comes up through springs and into the Suwannee, contributes a lot of water volume. Otherwise, without all that groundwater, Suwannee will just be a floodwater system, and during severe droughts, will very much dry out, limit the recreational value, the value of even visiting this region. And does Florida want to keep bending over for big business agriculture? I know it contributes billions of dollars, but you gotta think long term here. Do we want all these rivers to be all the same, roughly? Floodwater systems, no great mighty flowing year round with lots of springs. I think it's time to start really targeting this. Not gonna hold my breath too much, but yeah, especially when it's impacting the drinking water, and this is not sustainable. We're going to keep withdrawing more water using up more and more and more until there's none left. Lots of springs in Florida have lost between a quarter and a third of how much they used to put out, if not more than that, including Manatee Springs and Fanning Springs especially. Fanning Spring used to be a second magnitude spring. Now it used to be a first magnitude springs by how much water came out of it per day. Now it's just a second magnitude. Yep. So they can study this as much as they want. They can study a perfect case study of the decline of a near pristine water basin. I know even I first started visiting and falling in love with this basin in 2021, still far from pristine, as I came to realize. But see other major rivers, they're nice too, don't get me wrong, just less springs, less unique features. Would say it's just so easy to fall for this. Also over here, very nice. I mean, all of them pretty darn nice, some way or another. Nature is resilient, but also sensitive, and we have to decide. Are we going to stand for this? Are we just going to keep living our lives and pretending that this is sustainable, this is okay? I mean, I don't want to put anybody in a bind. It's just something to think about, that some of these may already be lost cause. Central Florida is overpopulated. South Florida over here, definitely overpopulated. Do we want this region too? Some very, very nice nature springs. Do you want them all to become overly polluted and diminish flows and just, oh well, the springs went away, let's build a swimming pool and some theme parks? That's for some people, but some people, we like the real Florida. We like to learn from nature and have lots of spiritual value. Even the Okefenokee Swamp, which I really hope to visit one day, that's definitely worth saving and warding off the aluminum mining interest in that area, which is beyond my control, but I really hope they keep warding that off. Oh yeah, man, I could go on and on, but that's pretty good overview. Of course, you can see the confluence of the Withlacoochee and the Suwannee, one of the most scenic overlooks, pretty high banks, right there at Suwannee River State Park. There's a few springs in that area. Santa Fe, very impressive river, very worthy of visiting. Of course, Suwannee River in general. Of course, they're divided into sub-basins: Lower Suwannee, Mid Suwannee, Upper Suwannee, and the other rivers that eventually join into the Suwannee. And I know some people might be thinking, oh, it's just too big. In this modern world, it's going to become too polluted. The water levels are going to continue to fall. Maybe that's true, man, but I don't know. It feels like it can prevent some of it, especially with like Blue Triton pumping some of these springs on the Santa Fe. Like, why are we giving out all this water, millions of gallons, just to be balled up and shipped away? Makes somebody else profit. Florida isn't even profiting, right? Why are we giving away our water for water bottling companies? Even though it is pretty clear that agriculture is the main threat, and it's hard to fight that too much, I suppose. Man, I've been talking for 30 minutes. What is the chance that anybody is listening to all this that doesn't already know a lot of this? But, I can't help but be passionate. Want to protect what we love, defend what we love, talk about what we love. And not that I don't love the Hillsborough River or the Peace River, or if I had to save one, man, there's one that's really unique, really worthy of protection, preventing it from getting worse, and it is. Unfortunately, the impacts are getting worse in most all of them, but especially up here with all this agriculture going on. And also, the soil is very sandy. Why are we, you know, as I've heard in other videos and documentaries, this is not a very good region for doing agriculture. Even down here, where they're farming for sugar, they have to put in a bunch of phosphate nutrients, which messes up the Everglades. But I hope they restore the Everglades. But I don't go down there too much. But there is some really good fishing. Lots of invasive species that are here to stay. But it is true, there is sea level rise going to affect most of this. But even with sea level rise, there should be some left. I don't know. So much in the air predicting long-term trends about humanity and Florida in so many places. But I just need to live my life and appreciate what I can. And I suppose it's a privilege to be able to talk about, love, visit, and appreciate places, even with the ecological grief, the impending worsening, dying of too much suburbanization or industry pressures. But it happens in Florida, it happens everywhere, seems like most everywhere. Okay, I think that's a pretty good overview. Of course, I'll provide links of these. You can read this even more. Oh yeah, so there's billions of gallons that come down the Suwannee. Of course, it fluctuates by season. When you have more rainfall, less rainfall, but you still have lots of springs pumping out millions of gallons every day. And just because it goes into the Gulf doesn't mean that water's wasted. It supports the estuary. It's what it naturally does. So, yeah, between 3,000 to 25,000 cubic feet per second, or 2 billion to 16 billions of gallons per day, going from the Suwannee River into the Gulf of Mexico. And of course, I just had it's like 30 something percent goes in the East Pass and 60 something percent exits out the West Pass into the Gulf. But they're both of those main river mouths are pretty impressive and visit worthy. And yep, that's a pretty good overview. Pretty proud of that. And can make more videos like this when I'm able to. But I think that's a good primer for future videos talking about agriculture impacts, especially if you drive in that region. Man, it's like farm after farm, especially in Suwannee County. There's like barely anything from what I've seen in Lafayette. There's some swamps. Levy County has a little bit more development, but not too much. Gilchrist, a little bit of development. Dixie County is pretty is that the Steinhatchee River? Yeah, there's not too much, but some little towns. Lots of trucks. North Florida, but still nice region compared to most of Florida. Maybe some people would compare it more with Georgia. I'm not too keen on what Georgia is like, besides like Atlanta. I made one visit up there. Yeah, pretty small town feeling. You have Gainesville over here. Gainesville being one of the only major cities in Jacksonville in North Florida. Panhandle is East Alabama. Basically. Oh yeah, and I guess I can make another video talking about Okefenokee, but you also have the St. Mary's River but most of the Okefenokee Swamp drains into the Suwannee River. It's in that drainage, sub-drainage basin. But lots of gators, lots of water stays in the swamp, it seems like. So, yeah, I think that's a good overview. Have any questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, let me know. All right, cool. Thanks.